What if everything we thought we knew about this case was a carefully crafted illusion? What if the audio everyone's been whispering about doesn't expose what Blake Lively wanted us to believe, but instead reveals something far more calculated? A behind-the-scenes power struggle over control, reputation, and the truth itself? Tonight, we're diving into the leaked recording that could change everything. It all begins on one of those nights that feels heavier than it should when work stretches past the hours of reason and silence fills the spaces between phone calls. Jamie is still working until 11, holding the weight of conversations no one wants to have, while somewhere else another conversation is unfolding that will quietly reshape everything. The voices in this audio don't sound like the chaos we imagined. They sound calm, almost rehearsed a quiet storm before a public explosion. And the words tucked inside that recording carry tension so sharp it could cut through glass when the woman on the line says she thought they were going to have to go into court. You can almost hear the exhaustion in her voice, but there's more beneath it. The fear that the moment they step inside that courtroom, it all becomes real. The world will see what's been hidden behind closed doors. She says for now it seems like they've delayed it, but if they persist, if they push to the limits, then court is the only place left to go. And if that happens, she knows it all falls on her, not just the work, but the weight of the truth she's been carrying alone. And somewhere in between those sentences lies a quiet confession that she knows she'll have to work harder than anyone else because this time the narrative won't protect her. Jamie once told her, "We're going to need you." And those words hit differently now. Because lawyers are waiting, PR teams are already spinning, and every call, every email, every whisper has been part of something much larger than anyone realized. They hadn't engaged the lawyers much yet, which to them was a good sign. But it was the calm before everything erupted, the kind of calm that fools people into thinking they still have control. What no one expected was that this small moment of calm was being recorded. Someone out there, someone the internet would later call Clark, quietly pulled back the curtain. Clark didn't just listen. Clark went to the recorder, to the clerk, and got the audio. The same audio now echoing across social media forums and court filings. The one Blake mentioned in her lawsuit. The one she claimed was proof that they were out to destroy her. That every legal move made against her was an act of retaliation. She wanted the world to believe this. Audio was the smoking gun. The reason behind every lawsuit, every headline, every broken alliance, retaliation. A word that can change the direction of a case in seconds. She tied it to claims of discrimination, to the idea that this entire legal battle was built to silence her. But when you listen closely to the recording, something feels off. Because what's said doesn't match what's been claimed. The laughter, the tone, the pacing. It's not a threat. It's not fear. It's something else entirely. Steve Sarowitz, the man she accused of threatening her family with $100 million and 2 dead bodies. He laughs when he says it, not cruelly, but like someone making an analogy, a metaphor about business and war, not a literal attack, but that detail never made the headlines. What made the headlines was the fear, the outrage, the drama, because that's what sells and that's what sticks. What we now know is that this statement from Steve was made on August 29th, and that matters, because it places the event right in the center of something much bigger, the marketing battle of the week. Everything started to crumble. We know from Wayfair's own timeline that Blake hadn't yet made any official complaints about harassment or discrimination during that period. She wasn't engaged in what the law would call a protected activity. She was engaged in a PR war, a war over who controlled the narrative of a movie that had already started slipping out of their hands. And when Steve spoke that day, he wasn't talking about harassment or lawsuits. He was talking about protecting his studio, protecting his work like a country defends itself from chaos. It was a metaphor for boundaries, for survival, for pride. But somewhere between the conversation and the court filings, the meaning was twisted the same way. A whisper turns into a roar when enough people repeat it. What happened on August 12th may hold the key, because just weeks before that recording, Blake and Ryan reached out to Wayfair with a demand. They wanted a statement released, one that would shift all the public anger away from them. They drafted it themselves. Ryan with his usual precision, Blake with her careful charm, and they wanted Wayfair to publish it on their behalf, a statement taking full responsibility for the chaos, for the tension, for the so-called troubled production. The same statement that would have rewritten history in their favor. The statement read like a confession dressed as humility. It ended with words about learning, growing, holding themselves accountable, and practicing what they preached. But beneath those polished phrases was one simple goal: to make the public stop questioning them, to make the headlines stop using their names to make the film's backlash look like someone else's fault. The thing is, no one knew what they were actually taking responsibility for. The words were vague, full of apologies that led nowhere. There was no mention of what happened. On the set, no clarity on the conflict. No truth about who caused what. Only the illusion of ownership, the illusion of accountability. They wanted Wayfair to carry the weight of the public's anger so that they could walk away clean. What no one realized then was that this wasn't just a PR move. It was the start of a quiet war over truth, control, and survival. And the audio that would later surface, the one Blake built her claim on, wasn't about harassment or safety. It was about power and the illusion of it. And by the time anyone realized that it was already too late, because the narrative had already spread, the internet had already chosen sides, and the court of public opinion had already reached its verdict long before the judge ever would. The more you listen to that audio, the more it becomes clear that what was happening behind the scenes had nothing to do with what the public was told. Because while the headlines screamed about threats and retaliation, the real conversation was about image and control and who would take the fall. When the movie began to unravel, the statement that Ryan and Blake drafted wasn't an act of accountability. It was a calculated move, a shield built from vague words to shift the story away from themselves. And the deeper you look, the more it makes sense. At that time, the backlash against the film was growing. People were asking why the stars weren't promoting it together, why the trailers felt misleading, why it seemed like the entire project had lost its message. Blake was selling her own brands, talking about her drinks, her side projects, while avoiding any mention of the movie's darker themes. And Justin Baldoni was left alone to defend the story that had meant so much to him. Interviews became awkward. Social media posts were dissected. Fans started choosing sides, and the gossip machine devoured everything. Wayfair, the studio, found itself trapped between creative control and celebrity power, because Blake and Ryan wanted to decide how the film was sold, what tone it carried, and how the public perceived it. But they didn't own the IP. They didn't pay for the production. They didn't have the final cut. So instead, they tried to gain control through pressure and persuasion. That's what the August 12th statement was really about. Damage control wrapped in sentiment. The draft said that the production was troubled, and that they took full accountability, that they were learning, growing, practicing what they preached. But the irony is that the statement itself didn't actually explain what went wrong. It didn't mention the marketing conflict or the public disagreements. It just created a cloud of emotion to make people stop asking questions. It said they were grateful for the chance to be imperfect, but it never said imperfect at what it asked for understanding but gave none in return. And when Jen Ale shared the draft with Melissa Nathan, someone finally saw through it. Melissa warned them immediately. She said, "Get a lawyer now," because the message was clear. If Wayfair refused to publish that statement, the gloves would come off. It was a threat disguised as diplomacy, the kind of move Hollywood understands all too well. And that's when the tension boiled over. That's when Sarowitz was called in to fix the chaos, and that's when that infamous conversation took place, the one Blake later turned into evidence of retaliation, the one where she claimed a powerful man threatened her with destruction over $100 million and 2 dead bodies. The phrase that launched 1,000 headlines. But listening to the tape, it's obvious it wasn't. That it was frustration, sarcasm, metaphor. It was business language taken out of context and twisted into menace because it fit the narrative she needed to build. By then, public sympathy had already started to drift away from her. The film's PR had become a storm of criticism, fans questioning every choice, interviews being mocked online and behind closed doors. Blake and Ryan were desperate to steer the story back in their favor. They believed that if they could get Wayfair to accept blame publicly, it would stop the bleeding. It would make people think the tension wasn't between the stars, but within the studio, that Wayfair had failed them, and that Blake and Ryan were victims of poor management. But Wayfair refused. They knew that admitting fault for things they hadn't done could destroy them, especially when their entire company was preparing for an IPO. Their reputation mattered too much to be sacrificed for someone else's mistake. So when Sarowitz compared defending his studio to a nation defending itself, he wasn't threatening anyone, was drawing a line, saying he wouldn't let someone rewrite history at his expense. Yet that single metaphor became the foundation of an entire legal strategy, and when Blake filed her motion, she cited that recording as proof of malice. She told the court it showed retaliation, discrimination, a hostile environment. But what it really showed was a marketing dispute, an argument about narrative control, not harassment, not danger, but pride and public image. And Wayfair's lawyers knew it. That's why they never mentioned the audio in their responses, not once, because addressing it would give it legitimacy. They ignored it because it was irrelevant. They knew that in the eyes of the court, a PR disagreement doesn't equal retaliation, but in the eyes of the media, it's gold. It's emotion. It's a headline that moves fast and doesn't stop for facts. So the story spread. And by the time anyone bothered to listen to the actual words, it was too late. The image of a powerful executive threatening a famous actress had already burned itself into the public consciousness. But the truth was simpler, quieter, and far more human. This was about a film that lost its direction, about a couple trying to protect their brand, and about a studio fighting to keep its integrity intact. Every message, every email, every conversation in that summer of chaos circled around one obsession: control. Who owned it? Who deserved it? Who would lose it? And the audio now exposed to the world is proof that what looked like a story of harassment and retaliation was in reality a story of ego perception and fear of losing power in an industry that feeds on control. By the time the audio reached online forums, it had already begun to fracture the narrative Blake had fought so hard to maintain. The once adoring public now listened with furrowed brows, replaying moments over and over, catching the pauses, the shifts in tone, the small cracks that didn't align with the image of calm control she had cultivated. It wasn't just the words that stunned people. It was the atmosphere, the rawness, the way the room seemed to vibrate with discomfort. Ryan Reynolds' voice came through faintly, measured but tense, like someone trying to steady a ship in rough seas. He didn't interrupt often, but when he did, the weight of his restraint said more than any outburst ever could. Across Hollywood, PR teams scrambled. Journalists who had previously avoided touching the case now circled back with renewed interest. The recording wasn't supposed to exist, let alone leak, and yet here it was. A living artifact of a relationship, a legal war, and a media empire unraveling in real time. Insiders whispered that even Taylor Swift's team had been made aware of the leak, given how closely her name had been tied to earlier testimonies. Some claimed she was furious that her private texts had been referenced again, while others believed she was quietly relieved that the truth was finally catching up to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni, the man who had been painted as the antagonist in Blake's narrative, remained silent. No interviews, no statements, not even a cryptic social media post. His silence became louder than any denial, and for the first time, the public began to question whether he had been the scapegoat all along. Legal analysts speculated that the leak could actually help his side. If the audio proved manipulation or emotional coercion, it could dramatically shift the tone of the ongoing depositions. Behind closed doors, Blake's lawyers were reportedly panicking, trying to determine whether the leak came from someone on their own team. But what really broke the internet wasn't the argument itself. It was the few seconds of vulnerability that followed. Blake's voice trembled, not out of fear, but from the realization that the narrative she built was slipping through her fingers. That moment, short and raw, changed the way audiences saw her. The power dynamic had flipped. She was no longer the composed star defending her reputation. She was a woman cornered by her own words. And as the clip circulated, reactions poured in from across the industry, from anonymous crew members to household name actors, all asking the same haunting question: if this is what made it out, what else is still being kept hidden? The fallout was immediate, and unlike anything Hollywood had seen in years. Within hours, talent agencies, lawyers, and brand representatives were fielding frantic calls. Blake's image, once considered untouchable, had taken a massive hit. The leaked audio wasn't just a PR problem, it was a credibility crisis. Every word she'd said in past interviews was suddenly being replayed in a new light. The confident, polished actress who once commanded the room was now being dissected in slow motion. Her tone, her phrasing, her silences, all turned into evidence of something deeper. Some defended her, saying the leak was an invasion of privacy. Others argued it was proof that she had been manipulating public sympathy from the start. Ryan Reynolds, caught in the crossfire, chose silence. Not denial, not defense, silence. For someone who built his career on charisma and humor, his refusal to speak became deafening. Paparazzi videos captured him leaving a Toronto event, head down, expression unreadable. When asked about the audio, he simply said, "It's not my story to tell." That sentence, simple as it was, exploded across social media. Fans interpreted it in 1,000 different ways, some as loyalty, others as quiet disapproval. But no matter how people read it, it marked a shift. Ryan was stepping back, and Blake was standing alone. Meanwhile, legal experts began breaking down what this could mean for the ongoing proceedings. The leak could trigger new motions, discovery demands, even sanctions if it was proven to come from someone inside Blake's camp. Justin Baldoni's lawyers, while maintaining public professionalism, were said to be privately vindicated. For them, this was the turning point, the piece of evidence that might finally dismantle the carefully managed version of events presented by Blake's team. And when the court confirmed that transcripts from this recording would be reviewed, the headlines wrote themselves, "The truth will be heard." The industry's reaction was telling. Directors and co-stars who had once been eager to praise Blake began quietly untagging her from posts. Magazines that had built entire covers around her family-friendly image started rewriting their features. Even late-night hosts, usually protective of A-listers, started hinting at the elephant in the room. Hollywood's loyalty had always been transactional, and now it was evaporating. Behind the scenes, one insider summed it up perfectly. "It's not that people are shocked by what was said, they're shocked it's finally out." But amid the chaos, something more unsettling began to surface. People who had worked with Blake years ago started reaching out to journalists, offering to share their own experiences. Stories that had been buried under NDAs and PR spin began trickling out. It wasn't just about this one leaked recording anymore, it was about a pattern. The narrative was spiraling beyond anyone's control, and for the first time, the actress who had mastered perception was at the mercy of it. The red carpets, the interviews, the crafted perfection, all of it suddenly felt hollow against the echo of that leaked voice. And as the world waited for her next move, one question lingered in every headline, every thread, every whispered conversation. When the truth finally comes out, who will still be standing? In the end, the leaked audio didn't just expose a private moment, it shattered an illusion. What began as a quiet legal battle turned into a full-scale reckoning that peeled back the polished layers of fame and revealed the human fragility beneath. Blake Lively, long seen as Hollywood's golden image of composure and control, now faced a mirror that reflected everything she had tried to keep hidden. The fear, the anger, the cracks in the narrative. Her silence in the days that followed spoke volumes. No rehearsed statement, no publicist-crafted apology could undo the fact that people had heard her, unfiltered, unedited, and real. For Ryan Reynolds, the recording became a turning point too. His decision to step back was more than avoidance. It was preservation. He understood that sometimes silence says what words cannot, especially when truth has already found its way out. Justin Baldoni's quiet endurance, once mocked as evasive, began to look more like strategy. The man accused of manipulation now appeared patient, measured, perhaps even vindicated. The tide was turning in his favor, and not through spectacle, but through restraint. As the industry continues to grapple with what this means, one reality remains clear. Hollywood has always been built on stories, but this time, the story told itself. The leaked audio became more than gossip. It became a symbol of accountability in an age where every word can be replayed, dissected, and immortalized. And while careers may recover and narratives may shift again, this moment will be remembered as the one where the truth, inconvenient, unpolished, and unstoppable, finally broke through the noise. Because sometimes what's caught off the record is the only thing that truly reveals who people are when the cameras stop rolling.